It is a sad, sad, sad world out there, man.
私の方がおじさんよりちょっと不幸かもしれない。それでも私はやけなんか起こさない。だから今毎日とても楽しいです。
And today we have Drive My Car. So I want to preface this entire video by stating the obvious that I am not I'm kind of cultured, but I am not the most cultured person. This is going to be an outside American perspective. I am but a simple son of a shepherd. I'm just coming into this as I'm going to be biased, but not to say that I don't partake in foreign films or other cultures, but as always, name mispronunciations, any cultural significances that I miss, whether they be obvious or subtle, keep all that in mind. This is just me, from my opinion, inherently biased, of a film that I went to go see that is a foreign Japanese film based on a short story, based loosely on a short story by an author that is Japanese that I very much enjoy. If you haven't heard of this movie, I wouldn't be surprised. This isn't playing in a lot of mainstream theaters. Hell, in order for me to go see it, I had to be invited by a friend of mine who pays more attention to the indie film circuits than I do, shocker, and I had to go to an independent film, like a local art community movie theater type of deal where they're like right now just getting off to watching Licorice Pizza 20 times every day. They were playing Drive My Car there as one of the films they were playing, like that, Red Rocket, Licorice Pizza, the Holy Trinity, if you will. I hadn't seen a single trailer. There's a couple like film people like me around my age that I enjoy watching on TikTok or YouTube, and they have mentioned the film in passing, and it's currently, there's nominations for it for like best foreign film in our like Golden Globes and such, and I'm sure probably even the Oscars, but there's talk about it being an exceptional dramatic piece. So I went in literally with no other knowledge than, oh, well, there's a guy and there's a girl and a red sports car, and it's based on a story by one of my favorite authors, and it's gonna be like probably an emotional drama. That's it. I knew next to nothing. So Drive My Car, again, technically came out 2021. Unless I'm mistaken, this may be the final 2021 film that I review. I think I'm caught up. I'm using that very loosely. I just think after this, the next film that I'm gonna probably see is a 2022 release, and so on and so forth. But this came out in the tail end of December, directed by Ryosuke Hamaguchi. Again, I'm gonna butcher these names, but director, I assume very prominent. He had a well-established filmography when I looked him up. He's done movies before. He did this movie. I think for the tone and the human quality and feel to it, I don't want to use the term mundane necessarily, but I don't know, it's just simple directing, but it's simple and yet supremely effective directing. This isn't a big a lot of sweeping motions or big pans or anything experimental, or it's just simple, simple tracking, simple dolly, a few long shots, some mediums, a lot of close and a lot of medium, a lot of close and mediums for sure. I think he does a good job. I mean, for the premise of the film, which is, while extremely emotionally and mentally complicated, I mean, applying that to film, it feels very much like I'm watching a book by Murakami, but I'll get to that in a moment. The cast, there's technically quite a few. There's the core two or more, but I'll focus on the main guy just for the sake of time, I suppose. I'm butchering this review already. Hidetoshi Nishijima. I'm an embarrassment to my country. Yeah, he was the lead. He wasn't the only lead, but I get lazy with movies like this. If I had a podcast where I was going into long-form explanation and like a Hot Ones level of, of research and all this, there'd be more depth to this. But when you have a cast of more than just a few, and in this case, there's the core two, but there's a larger cast to be held as well. In this case, I like to kind of just extend a good job all around everybody. Nobody delivers a poor performance at all. It's good. It's dramatic acting. It's fairly subdued, emotional when it needs to be. And this lead, and even the gal that's with him in the car, the other lead, no exception. They both played the characters they're supposed to play very well. It's a very good drama. I think, for me, on a personal note, it wasn't a compelling story. Like, obviously with a movie like this, you're not going to be on the edge of your seat necessarily, but I was just never like in it. There are moments where I started to get sucked in, and some like really good scenes and some good like a lot of monologues. It's kind of that style of like, it's kind of like that Midnight Mass style where someone once tried to insult Midnight Mass by saying, oh, it's just monologues, the TV show, but like that's dialogue, that's acting, that's how these shows go. I'll admit Midnight Mass is a whole lot of like monologue, two people monologue, and I guess this is similar. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of human conversation throughout this film, and then there'll be these really intense moments where it's like not like anxiety inducing necessarily, but just very intense. Just what they're talking about is very serious, very emotional stuff, and with the acting and just the facial expressions and the emotion that you can see like starting to bubble up from the surface of these people. Like, it's hard to explain, but there's at least 3, maybe 4 scenes in this film that I really enjoyed and I thought were very well done and very well acted. Like I've been peppering in here and there, so the reason that I didn't realize this until the credits started rolling at the beginning of this film, so I'm a very big fan of the author Haruki Murakami. In terms of like, I mean, just to name a few, While Wind Up Bird Chronicle, Kafka on the Shore, 1Q84, like there's plenty of books out there by this man. He has a very unique style of writing that is similar to Stieg Larsson, who is the guy who, rest in peace, wrote Girl with Dragon Tattoo series, the original 3. I'm not going to get into a whole dissertation on different authors and writing styles, but needless to say, I always enjoyed Haruki Murakami's work because he makes the normal and mundane dreamlike and fantastical. Like, to an extent, it's so weird to put into words. These human ideologies of like trauma and emotion and grief and guilt, and then be able to express them through these characters that they'll either, it's such a weird like contrast, because you'll have like grounded characters that are very like down to earth and just kind of what we would consider as quote unquote normal, and then you have characters that they'll have these quirks, so they'll have this like special, this je ne sais quoi about them. They almost seem like they're not quite human. There's something greater, and his writing style reflects that a lot. Forgive me if I'm rambling here, but I liked this film because while adapting a very, very, very short story by Murakami and then making the film and the rest of the story stand on its own legs, because it's a very long film, in both character dialogue, the settings of the film, and the content, the thematic materials and whatnot, it feels very much like like if I was reading a book by Haruki Murakami, it feels like I'm watching a book. Like, I mean, that's what a film is, right? But like, I'm watching one of his stories play out on screen, and I think that works, but also doesn't work like all the time. In terms of a book, his stuff works well for books because you kind of know what you're going to get into, but for a movie, especially for a long form film, I don't know if it quite holds up the same way. So I feel kind of bad because after I wrote all this and kind of came to an idea of how I felt about the film, critic consensus, the critics and even audiences, I mean, pretty much paint this as a damn near perfect film. I think I went in at a slight disadvantage because I did not realize this film is a minute shy of 3 hours. It's almost like The Irishman all over again. Like, long films like this, I mean, some of the greats, The Godfather, Lord of the Rings, like movies that are great, but I love to watch them, but you have to put aside so much time just to rewatch them, and it makes it harder to consume and find the time to do so. It's kind of like, was The Irishman a good film? I mean, I think most people would say yes. I thought it was all right. I thought it was decent. I thought it was a little bit too long, but again, it's like a matter of opinion, and I think its length kind of had something to do with it. It's a lot to take in. And same thing with this. I thought going into it, this movie was an hour and a half or something around there. I don't know why, but I got short film vibes. I did not know this film was 3 hours long, so I think part of my apprehension about wanting to give this a higher score, a bit shrouded by that. I just didn't realize how long of a film it was. Even now going into it, like I can see myself trying to sit down and watch this again and get a second opinion, but I think the film is a bit too long. I think that there are some shots that are purposefully extended in order to kind of like give the movie its tone. It's a slow burn. This film is the definition of a slow burn. Give you your settings. It takes its time showing you things and having these conversations and showing these people and these moments. It never, I don't want to say it milks it, but like this film takes its time, and in my opinion, it takes its time a little bit too much. Like I said, the narrative's good. It's very well written. It's a fantastic script, good elements of grief throughout and just human emotion. And I'm usually a big fan of these kinds of movies because I like it when these movies make you think about like existential and like life, death, suffering, like how we carry on in the face of that. And just like I'm normally kind of a fan when films go in that direction, and I think it handles all its elements well, but the narrative itself just it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't exciting, but just not as engaging as I would have liked it to have been. And just for me personally, I just feel like at some moments the film's independent parts are greater than the sum, if that makes any sense, but I feel like a lot of the film kind of overstates its welcome for me. I will say though, in terms of representation, I was extremely surprised and impressed. They have a gal who she speaks via sign language, and like that's just that's her whole character, sign language. So the cool thing is, this guy who is like a playwright and also like an actor, but like is helping to put this whole theatrical performance together, has it so it's a multilingual performance. So it's like different languages basically. And for this one of those languages is sign language. So there's whole scenes whenever they're doing rehearsals or performing, especially one powerful scene towards the end, you're watching someone act but they're signing, and it's just like dead silent, but you're still like in it, and you're watching her sign, and you're reading what the words are and watching her act, and the actor opposite her react to it. And it was supremely special. I like that kind of shit. It's different. That's good exposure, and that's good representation in my opinion. And it's just really cool that was in the film. I like that a lot. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say about the film. I almost feel like I'm not qualified to review this, and I feel like I'm probably not giving it the right amount of credit that it technically would deserve, but I'm going based off of my personal enjoyment and just from my experience in film. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like shitting on the movie because I think, oh, it's a boring 3-hour drama and all they're doing is talking. Like, no, there's great scenes, good cinematography, it's well directed, it's based off an author I enjoy a lot, so the writing is really good. Like all the components of the film are great, but the film itself is just kind of what doesn't quite hit it for me. But I've rethought my review 2 or 3 times now, and I think in all fairness, based on the quality of the film, but also my enjoyment, I think it's safe to say I would give this film a very, very, very high 3 out of 5. I think upon subsequent viewings in the future, if I rewatch this and maybe if I took more time to gain like a greater appreciation for it, I could see myself even coming as far as like a low 4, possibly. Like an argument could be made, but I don't know, man. I'm just going with my gut. My gut told me for this film it was just a little bit too long. And it's not the first film this year that I felt that way about. There's some films that I've watched where I'm like, it could have been like 20-30 minutes shorter. I think this film could have been about a half an hour shorter, and maybe it would have had more punch for me, but I don't know. Again, me, biased, uncultured, underqualified, but giving just my off-the-cuff review of it. I think it is a good movie, and I think in the right circumstances, if I were to give it another try, I think it could be a great movie. But I don't think it's a perfect drama. I think that there's some dramas I've seen out there, both American, Japanese, Korean, that are much more compelling, engaging, with the same kind of cast and quality to it. But just, I don't know. I get the hype and I get why people really love this, but for me, I would only go as far as to say that I liked it. I wanted to really like it, but I only liked it. As always, thank you guys and gals so much for watching. That's my review of Drive My Car. Stay tuned for the next one, whenever that happens. And thank you. Goodbye. Welcome to the new year of reviews. Goodbye, travelers.